We've got time, resources, and overhead. What are you going to make personally on the project? Think about that first and foremost. This is about your time and where you allocate it in order to get the project done. These things include the writing and idea generation, the shot listing, all of the paperwork that comes on the front end of an idea. That is all time spent working. Then there's pre-production. What do you have to plan as far as locations go? Phone calls you have to make, anything that you need to build or design for the project, any training that has to go involved or rehearsal, and then obviously the shoot, the schedule for the day, as well as drive time, and the overall amount of hours that you guys end up working on the set. A lot of time that runs over. And then the most time-consuming part of all of them, which is post-production. And don't forget about the small things like media management. Just shooting these episodes, I end up getting probably 30, 40 gigs of raw footage that I then have to import and then make proxies for, and that alone will take itself 2 hours. Not to mention the hours of edit time, as well as sound design, as well as color grade, and as well as final delivery. The render time as it goes out, the upload time as you upload it to whatever share service that you have where you're gonna send it off to the client. That is all time that you can't spend on other things when you're working on those. So that should be billable. You should make sure you take that into account when you budget for a project. Who and what do you have to pay in order to get it done? First thing that I always think about is props and costumes. I go to the thrift store a lot and I save a lot of money doing that, but a lot of the time there are specialty items that you just can't get there and that costs money. Make sure that you have that laid out before you give a budget to somebody so you know what that's gonna cost and you don't end up eating into your own pocket. The crew. This is probably the most expensive part of any shoot. Just to pay someone for a day or a half a day, that can range anywhere from a favor from a friend, which is great, all the way to whatever, $1,200 to $2,000 for a half-day shoot. People often wonder why movies cost so much, and I always just tell them to watch the credits. Every single one of those names had a paycheck associated with them. Don't forget to budget money for post-production. Sometimes you need assets or different subscription services, as well as any sort of stock or media that you're gonna need for particular shots or projects. Oftentimes you can get away without, but just make sure that if you do need specialty things, you do that in advance when pitching a project, just so you, again, don't cut into your own budget. And then the last is specialty supplies or rentals. So what camera are you shooting on? Are you shooting on something that you own? Or are you going to rent some gear, lenses, extra gear that you don't have, lights, equipment? All of that needs to just be taken into account. That's one of the easier things to budget for in the beginning, but just make sure you're thinking about that. What are the expenses that are ongoing for your business that you have to take into account? The first thing is your education and skill sets. Many people talk about that they're not paying you for your time, they're paying you for the experience that you've sunk in over the however X many years you've been doing this thing to be good at it. What are the subscriptions that you're paying for monthly that you should be taking into account with every single project to make sure that you're at a net profit? As well as your gear. What's on the shelf? What's valuable and allows you to pull off the shots or the experience that you know you can? And how do you budget all of that in to make sure that, again, you can continue to grow your gear and expand as a company? Another side note is to think about if you can rent out your gear, especially the stuff that you don't use regularly. I'm big on the fact that I hate stuff that doesn't get used. So if someone has really nice gear that is just sitting on a shelf collecting dust, oftentimes I will ask to hang on to it. And anytime I have gear that is not getting used, I either want to be renting it out or lend it to a friend, make sure that it sees the light of day. And then lastly is sort of distribution. Are there things that you're planning on spending money on post-completion? Things like film festivals or ad spend or any other way where you want to throw dollars into putting the thing out to the world. Just make sure that you take all of that into account when you budget the project from the very beginning. These are just a few of the things that I found on working on these projects that have been useful to me. If there's other ones that you think about or you take into account that I totally missed, I would love to hear about it. I hope this is just to help give you guys ideas on how to think about presenting projects. Also, these are really good pitch tools to help people understand why it's so expensive to do what you do, even if it's not that expensive, just for people to understand and get a visual on where things are going and that time and money is well spent, makes everyone feel safe and better about the project that you're making. Thanks again. I will talk to you guys soon.